Hey all, how's it going?
Hi,
Great.
Jason. How are you?
Do- Doing good. So I haven't done two people on the podcast in a long time, so we're on these little boxes. So I apologize for these little boxes, but for the people listening and watching, tell us who you guys are and what do you guys do?
You go first, Marissa.
Oh, well, thank you. I am Marissa Eigenbrud. I'm the Senior Vice President at Smith Publicity. We are a book publicity and marketing agency celebrating 25 years in business this year in 2022. We focus on working with authors and experts and publishers on building awareness around their launches and beyond. That's a quick summary there. Sandy, pass the baton.
Yes, Sandy Smith, Sandy Poirier Smith, but no one can pronounce that, but Sandy Smith, and the president here and co-owner of Smith Publicity. And we started off as like a one-person shop, and now we have like 31 of us, 32, Marissa.
Mhm.
And we've grown pretty much every year. We've learned a lot. We've made a lot of mistakes, and we've done some really great things. So we're excited, Jason, to talk with you and pick our brains and see if we can help some other people here.
Awesome. So well, let's jump into it. What's the biggest mistake you guys made?
Oh gosh, I love that. Wow.
One I would say is as we were growing, we expanded our offices. We are based in the US, but we had a Toronto office, a Los Angeles office, a New York City office, and a London office. And this is back in the day where, while we have always been hybrid, believe it or not, even 20 years ago we were hybrid, having that kind of brick and mortar office kind of made sense, and people expected that. Um, and our London office gave us this great, like worldwide, kind of brand appeal, which was fantastic. However, our London based, our English based clients caused, we probably were maybe 10% of our total clients, but they caused 95% of our customer service problems. And the reason for that is
Mhm.
the education that took to um, get them to understand what we do and the US market was just so much work. One example of that is an author who said, I want to be on Oprah. Well, okay, that's great. And can't she just schedule me in? That type of thing. They just didn't understand that the vastness, even geography. There was one author who said, I want to pop in your office for a meeting. I will be in a meeting in, no, so I'm going to a wedding in San Francisco. Can I drive over to see you in New Jersey this afternoon? It just like some people just didn't have the scope of the US market. So even though it looked good and they did,
Mhm.
10% of our business, we decided not to continue having a London based office just because those clients were not the right fit for us. We spent so much time trying to educate and get them to a place where they saw value in what we do.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Mhm.
I know.
Yeah.
Figuring out the perfect clients for you is
Mhm.
I always tell everybody it's kind of like a Vegas buffet. Like you got to kind of try everything, and then you're like, oh, that thing made me sick. Um,
Right.
so I'm not going to eat that anymore. So
Yeah, Martha, another
Yeah.
mistake that you want to talk about, unless you have another
Mhm.
idea, is
Okay.
our evolution of the longer projects rather than the shorter but more quick projects that we're evolving
Mhm.
to.
Yeah, I mean, I think this has definitely been an evolution, and also, again, I was not necessarily a giant mistake because it worked really well for us for a long time, but kind of having that moment of realization and an idea that I had too that really connects to that as well is there have been times over the years where we've tried to incorporate other types of services that haven't been the real meat and potatoes of publicity that we focus on and we're really great at. We for a few years added in social media services and we've dabbled in other areas too, and I think it's really kind of realizing when it's time to say goodbye, and sometimes you hold on to those those things for a little too long. And we were doing that with shorter term campaigns. I think for we had, previously 6 week long campaigns, or maybe even 4 week campaigns. We actually had 3 week campaigns, which in today's world of publicity sounds absolutely insane to do just 3 weeks of work with someone and have it be impactful. But, it's been part of the changing landscape of the media that we've had to react to as well. The time things are taking, the delays the publishing industry has faced too. So there's so many factors that have influenced those decisions, but really giving our publicists, our authors, the time that they need, and really kind of building that awareness of how much time is really needed to be impactful, is something that has evolved and we've really learned and grown from over the last few years in particular. And so at this time, we've eliminated everything that's 6 weeks and less, pretty much, and 2 months is not far behind it, I think, too.
Awesome.
And that's hard, Jason, because we made money from that. It was a
You're
great
right.
place, but it just wasn't in the clients or our best interest to continue with that based on the changes we saw.
Mhm.
So that was
Yeah.
interesting mistake. The other one, and I don't want to just harp on mistakes. I think it's for all small businesses, is when someone is not working out in their role. I think sometimes we hang on a little longer than we would because our emotions get involved. We like these people, we want it to work,
Mhm.
and I'm thinking of someone, Marissa, who was in our business development coordinator years and years and years ago. This
Yeah.
person was fantastic individual, and we just kept changing the job description and kept changing his focus, and it wasn't working. And we probably should have, in hindsight, let him go a lot sooner. It just wasn't the right fit. But as a small business, we get probably a little more connected to our team, and
Mhm.
that's probably a mistake. And fortunately, we don't have to do this very often, and we have hopefully better hiring and onboarding and vetting before we get to that stage. But that's something that we struggled with as a small business. I don't think it's unusual, but I know that since reading, because we read a lot of books here, you're supposed to hire slow and fire quickly
Yeah.
in small businesses.
Was it that this person
Yeah.
was not a cultural fit? Was that the main? That's what I've found a lot of
I
times.
think it was actually the opposite. It really was the I mean, he really was got along so well with everyone, really was a nice fit with somebody, but the skills were hard to really build in the direction that we needed them to go. And Sandy, would you agree with that?
I do, and again, because we read a lot of business books, that I know that 80% of people are let go because of soft skills, the culture, and 20% is, can do the job, but they just don't fit in. But I think in this case, it was the exactly what Marissa said. It culturally, showed up, was great. People liked him. He
Mhm.
was all in. Just kept making the same mistakes over and over and over again, and we probably gave him too much grace and too much training, like retraining and retraining, before we just said square peg round hole.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, we face it the other way around too. I mean, just, fairly recently we had someone, and it's funny, I learned from another great industry partner recently that she shared with me that at Shake Shack they have this phrase where they say there's no skunking. There's no skunking of the culture. So even if you're amazing at your job and you're just one of the best in terms of the skills, if you are skunking up the culture and you're creating negativity there, then you're not a right fit, and they're looking at an exit plan. And that was, we've had to have those conversations recently, and I think, that's just as hard to deal with as in terms of letting someone go or figuring out an exit plan as it is for someone who does, who has that connection from the emotional side and that cultural side, because you're like, wow, this person's great at their job. They're great at the tasks. It's just that on the other side, it's not.
Person, it was
Yeah.
just inside, just not a team player.
I have a question because you guys have achieved something a lot of people listening are wanting, where the owners can kind of start transitioning a little bit out, right? Like have a life
Yes.
again. and find someone to, run operations and really just kind of take the
Mhm.
baton and run. So going back 13 years, you know,
Mhm.
and knowing what you know now, how 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 can people listening do that? Because I find that's a big struggle. They don't want to relinquish control. Was that tough for you
No.
guys?
Oh, it's really hard, and it's hard for two reasons. One is the company's our baby; it's our livelihood. It's what's going to be funding our kids' college and our retirement and all that. So that's important to us. It's also too, and I've learned this from many of our authors. People will sell a company or they turn over control to the next generation. 3 years later, they're bored, and then they write a book because they want to connect back to what made them feel good and what kind of got them out of bed every day. So while, and I'm just being very transparent, I am not necessarily looking to step out of the business fully. What I'd like to do, Jason, is pick and choose more of the things that get me excited rather than the things that I don't want to
Mhm.
do anymore. My husband, on the other hand, as we speak, he's outside with our chickens. He
I knew
is
that was
He's
coming.
so
chasing chickens. Should that be the title? Can you send me a picture of him chasing a chicken, and that will be the
oh,
thumbnail?
and okay, I don't know if you can see it on my phone for everybody at home is the picture of him, which of course like is not coming up because the our Google call is on here. But here he is sitting on his tractor. Um, this way, yep. This camera's a little low.
There you go.
Sitting on his tractor in the backyard. But no, he's excited. He's a few years older than me, but not that older. But he's excited to really dive into other passions outside of work. And I am still like, oh, I want to do this, I've never had time
Mhm.
sometimes to really dive into some of these other opportunities for us. I think the hardest thing is to trust in someone. And what made it easier is Marissa because she is, and let's her get her head big, but
Get
she
closer to
is
the screen.
get
Right,
closer
here I
to the screen.
come.
And she's also super tall too. What are you, 6'3", Marissa?
6'3". Yeah,
And she
6'3".
6'3", and she wears heels, so she's got a beautiful presence.
I just
But it's
intimidate people into letting me run their company. That's all it is.
exactly. It's having trust and sharing and sharing, like opening up our books, opening up our real thoughts. And it's not an overnight process. It's many years and trusting and slow steps of giving control and giving insights and allowing, and this is what's the hardest part, is allowing for
Mistakes.
difference of opinions, mistakes, allowing for those mistakes and saying, I'm going to let not just Marissa, but our team, they have a different view than I do, weekly updates, but I'm trusting the team and saying, okay, you feel strongly about this, let's go. And that's worked for us. And I know we might talk about this in the future, but we're getting to that stage of size where we need a lot more expertise than we have for running the day-to-day business than we have now. We don't need a human resource person sitting in a office or a cubicle all day, but we need human resource expertise. The same thing for IT, the
Mhm.
same thing for all the other functionalities, the CFO. And having someone like Marissa is just so great because I don't feel like I'm in a vacuum doing it alone. And that's something that for people who are looking to do this in the future is to find that internal person or someone new, whoever to your company, someone that you trust, but is just as excited to grow the business and a sounding board for the headaches and the challenges. So it's actually freeing because you're not alone.
Yeah, I always tell our
Yeah.
mastermind, once you figure out as an owner or leader where the ship is going, then you can bring the right people on and delegate, the outcomes rather than delegate the tasks because many people do them
Mhm.
very differently. And the reason why I've always liked to get a number of different really smart people together is because you see things differently. And I like how you probably did it in stages of, this was not a
Mhm.
Mhm.
quick fix. Whenever I tell anybody, when you want to get to a point where you have the option to sell or the option to pick and choose to do what you want in the agency, that's really when your agency scales, because now you've transitioned from an owner to more of a leader in the because the owner does everything. Like, you can't chase chickens as an owner. Well, I mean, I guess you chase different kinds of chickens to pay you and collect the checks.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, but
No, and
again,
I add too, I think that, oh, thanks. I was just going to add into, I think the fact that even as a smaller company, and a smaller agency here, having the 30 some people, but even in the years prior, if we were closer to 20, there's always been layers, and having that in place with Dan as CEO, Sandy as president, we've had other vice presidents as well in there. So we're leadership heavy, but in the right ways, that it feels like it's not an agency where you have the CEO and you just have somebody who's replacing that person, and there's no kind of other people around to support that. So I think, for me, and I've, again, 13 years I've been here. It's my entire career. I started at Smith a year after college, and it's intimidating at times to even think about running a business when I, didn't work really anywhere else before, and this is all I've known. And so it's so great to know that as I learn more things or take on new responsibilities and grow over time, that I have others around me who have a lot of people who have been through it just as long or longer than I have, but who are, just there to support, and just, especially when Sandy's role and having Sandy as a partner through so many things that we do together all the time. It just doesn't feel as daunting of a thing to potentially take on, whatever that looks like in the future when Dan wants to fully go off the pasture and and seeing what's next from there. But it's knowing that you have these true, like, partners that you're doing this with. You're not making the decisions solely on your own. You've got these different opinions and ideas to loop into it. And I mean, that's always been something that we've really just kind of stood by at Smith, is that everybody has a voice at the table. So we're always looking at, it's not just the leadership team, but new people who are joining in. Like, what ideas do you have? How can we grow? What are you bringing in from wherever you worked before? And some of our best ideas and most profitable growth opportunities have come from the ideas that have come from those, who are newer to the team too. So it's just knowing you're not alone through all of it makes it a little less daunting.
And I think, I go back to, Sandy, what you said too about, now that I don't have to do everything, like, but I still want to be a part of it. And like how you were saying, like a lot of owners that sell or whatever, I was like that when I sold my agency. For like 2 weeks, I was like, yes, I can go chase my chickens or whatever, right? I can't get this out of my head. This needs to really be a thumbnail. How you can chase chickens and grow your agency. But I was depressed after I sold because I didn't feel like I had that significance. And then I also went through a depression in my agency when I was running it, when I actually transitioned from the owner to the CEO, the person really leading the ship, because I didn't have to do all the other little stuff. I only had to do like 5 different roles, which were like, setting the vision for the agency, coaching and mentoring the leadership team, blah, blah, blah. Right. And I always tell my mastermind members and the people that I work with and all the people listening on, I'm like, look, when you get to this point where you can pick and choose the things you want to do, you'll go through a depression. And then you have to realize, your role switched, and like, you need to hand over the reins and trust the people that you put in place. And then once you do that, then it's very freeing. But in the very beginning, when you go into a meeting and you're like, hey, can I help? And they're like, no, Jason, I got this. And then you go to the next meeting. They do the same thing. And you're like, I'm a piece of shit.
Right.
Don't you need me anymore? No, we don't. And that's the goal. But it's when you've been needed and you feel at the end of the day like, wow, I helped, I did this, and that's taken away. It's a big shift for sure.
Oh yeah. I'd be interested to hear what's the biggest, most important thing you've learned in the business to date that you both have learned? And I'll let you go first, Marissa.
Hmm. Wow. I mean, I really think it's, and I'll shout out to Diane Eigenberg, that's my mom, because growing up, she always told me to be true to myself, and I almost got it tattooed on myself at one point and did not do that, and she was very happy that I didn't do that. But it sounds so basic and cliche, and but I really, over my years, I learned that I went through kind of a big personal transition about what was it, like 7 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago now, and it was this moment where I personally had this like kind of moment where I'm like, I've got to just be true to myself, and that was a time that I found that I could really come forward and encourage more transparency and just honesty and open communication about things and sharing my ideas more fluidly. And I think that was just such a big jump. And then I feel like so much of the company has even changed, not just because of me in that way, but I'm saying just as a whole, we've all just moved into this culture of transparency. And we definitely had earlier years where there was a lot of walking on eggshells or trying to like kind of scoot around, having to have tough conversations sometimes because of people's feelings. And I just feel like we are in such a great place now of all just knowing that if we're honest with each other, we have those open, conversations, we state how we're really feeling about something. It's really just making our work easier. It's making everything more productive and more efficient in a lot of ways too. And that's just been, again, like I said, it sounds so cliche in some ways, but it really has been such a big moment or just such a big transition for me, and then just seeing the company move in that way as well.
Cool. And what about you, Sandy?
Um, I agree with everything Marissa's saying, and I'll take a different turn here in kind of a client service perspective. Something is to just pay attention to the details of what's working and try to replicate that. And what I mean by that is many years ago, when I was working closely with Dan and he was working his 18-hour days, 7 days a week, as new agencies owners kind of do, um, is to really pay attention to the nuggets of what's working and to try to replicate that. And when you read something that Dan wrote about an author, you just wanted to read this book. It's like, damn, this is really good. It could have been the worst book, or not the worst book, but a book that would be not appealing to me in the slightest. But he could write in a way that it's like, wow, I want to see that. Well, how do you capture that spirit and replicate that on all our projects? And the same thing for even onboarding or communication. And when I first really got into working with Dan, what was exciting for me was finding his brilliance and what he was doing, and then making it happen more consistently across all our clients. For example, we have a author questionnaire that people have to fill out before they start working with us. We have that wasn't standard when we first started, and now we do it. We've expanded it, and now our publicists and our team get the right information at the beginning, and we don't stop. And the same thing with our communication delivery, where we used to have monthly reports, and then we started having cumulative reports, and then we started having standard calls and more sophisticated reporting, and just figuring out what makes one client happy, what makes one publicist efficient, taking that nugget and then replicating that where it makes sense. I think that is
Mm-hmm.
something that we do well. We never rest on our laurels that we're as good as we can be. We want to keep learning and listening to our clients, listening to our publicists, because we want to be ahead of the service that we provide rather than trying to catch up with the trends. And I think that's one way is really listening and then picking out those golden um, service deliverables and trying to make it standard across where it makes sense.
I like it. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yeah.
too many of us forget about the things that are working and we are constantly focused on new stuff rather than just going back to the basics. I
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
always joke with people when I was playing tennis in college, like if I was doing bad, my coach would yell out, "Go back to the basics." Like you're thinking too hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, we've definitely had, I mean, in our industry, there's always something new popping up, whether it's, Substack and Clubhouse and TikTok and
Oh,
new media.
Clubhouse.
I remember when podcasts first showed up. I mean, that wasn't that long ago when they were really something that was worth paying attention to and adding into our work. And we're like, what are these podcasts? These guys in their basements, doing their podcasts, and is this going to be a thing? And it was something that we really had to, we have to always kind of pay attention to what are those things that are starting to bubble under the surface and get some attention, and how can they be impactful, but not kind of throwing everything, resources, time, energy into oh my God, how do we figure out how to have Clubhouse as part of our campaigns and make sure it's a staple in there? And it's okay, well, we can dabble in it a little bit. That's always kind of been our approach, was not running full force into whatever the next trend is, but really settling back into, and a lot of people say, hey, well, traditional media is dying in a lot of ways. Certainly certain areas of it are not doing as well as they were when I started 13 years ago here, but there's a lot of other spaces that have been booming with blogging and, again, podcasts and videocasts and whatever else it is. So that's always just been something that we've really tried to not let the trends dictate our decisions and the direction of our campaigns too much over
Love it.
time.
Love it. In wrapping up,
Mhm.
if there was a billboard with us, what would you guys put on the billboard? And it doesn't have to be work related, whatever it was. What would be on your guys' billboard?
Oh,
Oh
I
boy.
love that.
Oh,
Well, it's funny.
out of
I feel like Dan would say we do good things for authors. If Dan was on this with us, because that's always been the tagline for so long of Smith. That it sounds so basic, but we always said we do good things for authors, and it's just there's so many bits around that. But I'll have to go back to my previous one and say be true to yourself. We'll give Diane some credit there again.
yeah, I'll agree with Marissa. One thing we say in our client service, I think the answer to almost every question we get is it depends, and it's kind of a standard joke
Mhm.
because there's no for what we do, there's no one right answer. Whether it's a timeline, the length of service, how much you should be doing. So, from a company perspective, I would say it depends because it really depends on you. So that's something from the service. But I do want Jason to chasing chickens and running an agency. I think we might have to do something with that.
Oh
Yes.
yeah, you definitely should. Well, awesome. Well, what's the agency website people can go and check you guys out?
It is smithpublicity.com. Try to keep it pretty easy.
Awesome. Well, I think everybody appreciates the easiness because a lot of times people make it very complex and misspell everything because they couldn't figure out a right domain.
Right.
So we all
Yeah.
appreciate the easy names. But thanks so much, everybody, for coming on. It was a lot of fun. I wish you guys tremendous success. And if you guys want to be around other amazing agency owners on a consistent basis where we can help you be able to figure out if you want to chase chickens or not and really focus on the things that you want to be doing, I'd love to invite all of you to go check out Digital Agency Elite. This is our exclusive mastermind for agency owners and agency leaders that really want to get better and be surrounded by amazing people so you guys can grow your digital agencies faster. And until next time, have a swank day.